Alright, guys, so with the release of Superman, I am, for the first time in a long time, actually excited for the future of a DC cinematic universe. So, I thought I would compile all of the upcoming projects that are either like shooting, so these are definitely coming out, or ones that have been announced, so we hope they're coming at some point. And then we'll also cover some that are kind of reported as being in the works. So let's start off with something that we know for sure is going to be released on August 21st of this year, 2025. And that is Peacemaker Season 2. Now, not gonna lie, this one already gets confusing. So, if you don't remember, Peacemaker appeared in The Suicide Squad, and The Suicide Squad was then spun off into a Peacemaker solo show, and both The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker Season 1 was in the DCEU. Now, apparently, Peacemaker Season 2 is going to be set in the brand new DCU that was just started by Superman. Now, if you watch the trailer for Peacemaker Season 2, it seems like they're going to do a multiverse thing, and I assume that's how they're going to explain a lot of it. And not going to lie, before I watched Superman, I was pretty worried about this just because I was like, oh my god, are we really going to do multiverse stuff right as our cinematic universe is starting off? But I got to be honest with you, now that I've seen Superman, they're clearly starting off with a very fantastical universe. I mean, we've got pocket dimensions in our first DCU outing. So I guess a multiverse thing wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. Now, I do wonder, are we going to have the old Peacemaker from the old DCEU coming into our new DCU? I assume that's what's going to happen. Oh, and by the way, I am going to spoil Superman because I'm about to say something that happened in Superman that will potentially explain something about Peacemaker Season 2. So don't be here if you haven't seen Superman. But in Superman, we see Peacemaker getting interviewed on a late night talk show. The Peacemaker of the old DCEU would not be interviewed by he's a loser, so he wouldn't be interviewed by a talk show host. So I assume that, yeah, like what we see here in this picture is the Peacemaker from the DCEU comes into the DCU, gets confronted by the DCU Peacemaker, and I wonder if they're going to go as crazy as having the old Peacemaker kill the new Peacemaker and sort of like take up his identity as an actual hero that's respected. I don't know. So we're going to have to wait until season 2 to see exactly how they handle it. But I will say, if you are going to criticize James Gunn, this is confusing. There's no way around it. Maybe it'll all work out, but as of right now, we're just not really sure. All right, next up, we have Supergirl, which is releasing on June 26th, 2026. So this is a movie that is, of course, following up on the end of Superman, where we learned that Clark doesn't actually have a dog in Krypto. He was just watching Krypto, and Krypto is actually Kara's dog. And so she shows up at the end to pick up Krypto. And what I will say is that this movie is, they've specifically stated that it is going to be adapting Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is a specific comic book run. And I have read that comic book run, and I'm not going to go into specifics on it because I don't want to potentially spoil the movie. But what I will say is that I think this has the potential to be a really great movie. Like, I enjoyed Superman, but I didn't love it necessarily, and I actually think that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow has the potential to really surprise people and be significantly better than Superman. Like, I think it has the potential to be great. So, hopefully it lives up to that potential. And I will say this, when it comes to Superman, I know a lot of people were upset by the whole like the Jor-El twist where he turned out to be evil in some senses, almost like a Viltrumite from Invincible. Now, on the one hand, I don't care that much about Superman lore, so I couldn't care less that they changed that origin. I mean, I think it makes sense for the movie and the story that they were trying to tell, so I'm totally fine with it. But some people brought up an interesting fact, which is that if Kara grew up on Krypton, like we know she did, she would know what the Kryptonians are about. And you would think that she would have told Clark about Krypton and about Kryptonians and whatnot. So, a lot of people are speculating that Kryptonite video, or that video from his parents on Krypton, was likely doctored by Lex Luthor, even though there is that scene where Mr. Terrific is like, hey man, I know those guys over there, they wouldn't show that video unless it was completely legit. So Mr. Terrific does have that line, but I mean, it could have been doctored by like Brainiac or something like that. I mean, that is a possibility. But I also bring this up to say that one of the things that I didn't realize was, yes, Superman is not an origin story, and thus they didn't show us the destruction of Krypton. However, I feel like we're almost certainly going to actually see it in Supergirl. And so I think we're going to get some more context on Krypton and what they were like in Supergirl. So I think people should be excited just for that reason, just to get more lore. But again, the story that they tell is really great. And I think one of the best things that Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow does is that it truly does set Kara aside and makes her own character apart from Clark. Because, the Supergirl TV show, I mean, I watched it when I was a kid, and I enjoyed it, but she was very much just a carbon copy of Clark in a lot of ways. And those stories did feel like they were just Superman stories, but with Supergirl. Woman of Tomorrow is very much its own thing. So I think people should keep it on their radar. I know that a lot of people are just going to view it as, oh, whatever, she's a knockoff character, right? But I think that this story is unique, and I think it has a lot of potential. So get excited, maybe. I don't know. All right. Next up, we have another movie, Clayface, coming on September 11th, 2026. Now, this movie is an example of why I'm really optimistic about the future of the DCU. Because this movie is a perfect example of James Gunn's approach. Whereas you may be asking yourself, why the hell are we getting a Clayface movie before the DCU Batman movie? And the answer is that Mike Flanagan just gave James Gunn a really good pitch and wrote a really great script. And they were like, all right, let's make it. It's not this convoluted 4D chess marketing maneuver of like, we must get Batman in before Clayface or else the universe isn't going to build up properly, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, we're not moving forward on Batman yet because we don't have that script ready. But Mike Flanagan turned in a fantastic Clayface movie, so we're not just going to arbitrarily keep it on a shelf. We'll just make it. Screw it. And honestly, I think if they make this thing for like $30 million or something like that, make it a more budget horror movie, that could be really cool, because then it wouldn't have to make a fucking $1 billion in order to be considered a success or something stupid like that. So, yeah, man, I mean, I love Mike Flanagan. The idea of a horror movie just set in the DCU, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's going to be a really good litmus test of how James Gunn says that different projects in the DCU are going to have completely unique tones. I mean, it's going to be very curious to see what this ends up looking like. And, of course, it will presumably be the same Clayface that we saw, like, canonically. It will presumably be the same Clayface that we saw in Creature Commandos. So we'll see how it works. All right, next up we have Lanterns. So we don't have a specific release date for this, but we do know it's coming sometime in 2026. Now, this is another project that I'm going to be very curious to see how it pans out, because it's another project that promises a completely separate tone from Superman, right? They have described it as True Detective, but with a couple of Green Lanterns. So it's going to be a mystery. And I remember back when they did the big presentation, James Gunn mentioned that it was going to have a mystery that ties into like the overarching story of the DC universe. So it sounds really fascinating, right? You have Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, and they're going to be working together. You're going to have a rookie in Jon Stewart and an old timer cop in Hal Jordan. I mean, that it just seems like a really cool concept. So definitely one of the projects that I'm most looking forward to. And hopefully it actually does feel completely different from Superman, and we can get a DCU with more variety. All right, next up, we got a movie with no release date, but it was announced during James Gunn's whole presentation thing, and I'm talking about The Authority. So this is a project or a property that I know nothing about, really. The only thing that I know about it is that the engineer, which we actually did see in Superman, she's the mechanical lady that, like, had made Superman. She, like, dug her robot tentacles into Superman's lungs or whatever. She is apparently a member of the Authority. That being said, this is a project that they announced, and we just haven't really heard much development since then, so it's a little dubious as far as whether or not it'll actually happen, but I did really like the engineer in Superman. And the other thing about the Authority is that apparently it's kind of like the Justice League, but the superheroes are kind of like, we're going to get the job done regardless of how we do it, right? So they're kind of like a more gray area Justice League, where they're probably cool with killing people. They're cool with casualties, probably. So it does sound like an interesting property. But yeah, we just have no idea. We don't have any updates on it. Another series is Waller. This was also announced during James Gunn's whole big presentation of him setting up the projects that he's going to do. Now, the one interesting thing about this show, because Amanda Waller, let's be honest, not exactly a character that I've been pining to see a spin-off show for, but one interesting thing about the show is that it was going to be developed by the people that did Doom Patrol. And if you've never seen Doom Patrol, it is absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, am I just inherently excited to see those guys work within the DCU again? Yeah, but I admittedly don't really know what you would do exactly with an Amanda Waller show. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. All right, next up we have an interesting one. This is a movie, and it is The Brave and the Bold. So this is as of right now, the movie starring Batman that is announced for the DCU. And back when James Gunn did his whole presentation, he announced The Brave and the Bold, and that it would be a movie with Batman and a Damian Wayne Robin. And over the years, there have been multiple reports stating that there was a director, Andy Muschietti. He was sort of reported to be helming the movie. A lot of us were worried because that's the guy that did The Flash, which, was a little bit poo-poo caca. So a lot of us just don't want that guy directing The Brave and the Bold. But then over the years, reports have stated that he's probably not going to end up doing it. I remember in an interview, Andy Muschietti was like, yeah, they haven't talked to me about it in like 6 months. And it's like, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean James Gunn hasn't talked to the director of his Batman movie in 6 months? So it's just a lot of, reports of trouble behind the scenes. And a lot of people have been speculating like, oh, maybe they're scrapping this Brave and the Bold idea and they're just going to rope in the Robert Pattinson Batman into the DCU, and Robert Pattinson is going to be the mainline DCU Batman. But honestly, as of like a little bit, like a month, like this past month, they've been reiterating that no, the Robert Pattinson Batman will not be the DCU Batman. And James Gunn has reiterated that he's just going to be letting Matt Reeves do his thing, So I don't know exactly what's going to happen with this movie, but do I think that there could be 2 live-action Batman at the same time? I actually think it could work, but the way that you would have to do it is Matt Reeves would have to just double down on the realism, right? Like, his Batman needs to be super grounded. And I think the DCU Batman, if they model themselves off of like the Arkham games, for example, and they are more fantastical, like the DCU Batman is fighting, Killer Croc and Bane and all these more fantastical characters, I guess it could work. But will audiences be a little cynical about it? Almost certainly. But hey, man, I think if they're completely distinct from one another and they're both good, I think it could work, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. All right. Next up, we have Paradise Lost. So this is apparently going to be a Wonder Woman kind of show on HBO Max, although I don't know that Wonder Woman will necessarily be in it, but they've described it as Game of Thrones, but set on Themyscira. And yeah, that's really all we know about it. And I'd definitely be interested to see what it is, right? Like if they can actually make like a Game of Thrones level, like political sort of thing where it's like the Amazonians going to war and stuff, like that could work really well. But yeah, we just don't know that much about it. By the way, I was showing a picture from Creature Commandos. It would be live action, not animation. Next up we have Swamp Thing. This is a movie that was reportedly going to be directed by James Mangold. And I mean, he still is attached to it. The main problem is that he's also attached to a Star Wars movie. So who knows if he's going to be directing Swamp Thing before Star Wars? Although if he had to prioritize, he would probably prioritize Star Wars for obvious reasons. So who knows when he would get around to directing this, but this is a project that is in the works. I don't know that much about Swamp Thing, so I can't say I'm too excited, but anything James Mangold is doing, I'll at least be interested in. All right, next up we have a TV show, Booster Gold. So I don't know that much about this guy. The only thing I know is that he is like a guy from the future that travels back in time and uses futuristic technology to be a superhero. That is a funny premise, and from what I understand, it is a comedy. So I would definitely be interested to see how this would turn out. But yeah, other than that, we just don't know much about it other than James Gunn wants to do it. All right, next up we have a movie. This is Teen Titans. So what's been reported about this movie is that the person who wrote the script for Supergirl, her name is Anna Nigora, something like that, and James Gunn liked that her Supergirl script so much that he tapped her to write a Teen Titans script. So as of right now, all we know is that she is writing a script for Teen Titans. And this will be an interesting one because I would assume that if they did this, it would be with like Damian Wayne Robin leading it. I mean, that's what I would assume. So I feel like this movie is pretty dependent on Brave and the Bold getting their shit together, right? Because if Brave and the Bold ends up happening, I mean, they would have to wait for that movie to be made in order to then have Damian Wayne lead a Teen Titans movie. Unless, it ends up being Robert Pattinson as the mainline DCU Batman, then it wouldn't make sense at all for there to be a Teen Titans movie because he doesn't even have a Robin yet. Although I guess they could introduce a Robin in the Batman Part 2. So, I don't know. The Teen Titans is definitely one that I'd be interested in, but realistically, how soon are we going to get it? Probably not very soon. The other thing about Teen Titans is just the reality that children age way too quickly. So it's like you'd be able to make one Teen Titans movie and then the entire cast just looks like they're already paying off their mortgages and have 3 kids. Like the fucking Stranger Things cast look middle-aged. So that's also going to be a struggle with Teen Titans in live action. Spoiler alert, next up we had Blue Beetle. So this is another kind of confusing project because Blue Beetle came out in the era of the DCU, although it was never explicitly labeled as a DCEU movie. So if you actually watch Blue Beetle, there's nothing tying it into like Henry Cavill or Ben Affleck or the Snyderverse or anything like that. So they could just like indoctrinate Blue Beetle and say that it was always the start of the DCU. But regardless of how it's officially labeled, we are going to be getting a Blue Beetle animated series that is voiced by Jolo Maridueña. It's not going to be a live action sequel, probably because that movie flopped. But yeah, I mean, I'd be down to watch an animated series. I think that could still be good. And then hopefully we'll see Jolo in other live action projects. I think that could be really cool. All right, next up is a weird one. There was a reported Bane and Deathstroke movie where I guess they're teaming up, or I don't know if they're rivals. I don't know. And what was interesting is that in an interview, because for a long time it was just reported, so it was one of those things of like, who the hell knows if this is actually real or not. And James Gunn was asked about it in an interview, and he kind of gave us a coy answer of like, yeah, there might be something like that in production. So will it actually be, at the end of the day, a Bane and Deathstroke movie? Maybe they're just like the villains for The Brave and the Bold, something like that. We don't really know at the end of the day. But would I be interested in it? I mean, it sounds kind of weird, so sure. All right. Next up, we have Creature Commandos Season 2. So, oddly enough, Creature Commandos is technically the start of the DCU, but we don't really treat it that way because we treat Superman as the official start of the DCU. But either ways, I did watch Creature Commandos, and I did think it was pretty solid, so I'm definitely going to be down for a Season 2. But I will say is that Season 2 could and should improve because there definitely were some downfalls with Season 1 that ultimately led me to not loving it. So hopefully Season 2 is a lot more solid than Season 1. And kind of spitting out of Creature Commandos is Sergeant Rock. So as you see on here, Sergeant Rock did appear in Creature Commandos, and he's a character that I know not too much about. Just that as he's portrayed in Creature Commandos, he was a soldier during World War II. And, yeah, apparently he's a DC Comics character. I don't think he has superpowers or anything. I think he literally is just a soldier. And James Gunn is actively pursuing making a movie about him. Now, the craziest part is that they actually managed to attach Luca Guadagnino to direct it, who directed Challengers, which was my favorite movie in 2024. So, I mean, I'll watch whatever the fuck that guy directs. I mean, he made an incredible movie in Challengers. So, am I inherently excited for Sergeant Rock? No. Am I inherently excited for Luca Guadagnino? Yes. So, yeah, I will watch this. I guess it could. I mean, it probably won't just be a straight up World War II movie. It'll probably be elevated by like fantastical stuff during World War II. Kind of like how Captain America, the First Avenger, had like whatever, like Tesseract technology and weird stuff like that. So it'll probably feel like a DC movie, but it does sound weird off the bat. Next up, we have a movie in production, Wonder Woman. Sorry, not in production, in development. Yeah, that's all we know about, is that DC is making a Wonder Woman movie. Probably could have guessed that, but James Gunn has officially talked about it. But yeah, we don't know anything about it. But obviously, it's one that is pretty important to their overall plan. And next up, James Gunn has not explicitly said this, but it was actually in a Wall Street Journal article that he does plan on leading up to a Justice League movie. Again, pretty obvious that would be something that you should be leading up to. But they did make it sound like they're not going to go the DCEU route, where they're just going to like make a Justice League movie and like one or two more movies. It does seem like, again, from that Wall Street Journal article, that they want to introduce Batman and Wonder Woman and establish them before they make a Justice League movie. So it does seem like they are going the more traditional Marvel route. At the end of the day, I'm of the opinion that it doesn't really matter how you do it, as long as you just make great movies. So, I don't think that the problem with the DCEU is that they move too fast. I think they just made bad movies. I think that's really it. Well, there are other problems, but we won't get into them in this video. All right. The next two projects have not been officially stated, but there was a report just that literally came out a couple days ago that following Superman, these are projects that James Gunn is considering. Not that there's any active development being worked on these, but James Gunn is considering making these. The first one is Mr. Terrific. Apparently he's getting a spin-off show. James Gunn is considering giving him a spin-off show. And honestly, if you'd asked me before Superman, I would have said, nah, I'm good. After watching Superman, though, I will absolutely watch a Mr. Terrific spin-off show. He was like maybe the standout character in the movie. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was very much a Superman movie. I'm not saying that Superman was outshined, but Mr. Terrific was just aura farming in like every scene he was in, and he was awesome. So I will absolutely watch a Mr. Terrific HBO Max show. So we'll see if that actually ends up coming to fruition. The next one is really weird, though. Apparently, James Gunn is considering a Jimmy Olsen show. Now, whenever you say that this is a weird choice, people on Twitter will be like, "You don't know, bro. You don't know all the shenanigans that Jimmy Olsen gets himself into in the comic books." And maybe that's true. Maybe there is just a wealth of Jimmy Olsen lore that will translate well into a TV show, and I'll eat my words. But yeah, just as of right now, do I need a Jimmy Olsen spinoff show? No. No, I do not. Unless it's more framed as like a Daily Planet spinoff show. I feel like that could make more sense. Like if you really flesh out Lois and Jimmy as well as Wendell Pierce's character, I feel like that would make more sense. But we'll see. Well, we'll see if this actually ends up happening. But yeah, those are all of the projects that are at least either like filming or in production or in development or a thought in James Gunn's head. So yeah, are you excited about any or all of that? Did you like Superman, and are you excited for the rest of the DCU, or did you hate Superman and are you just totally out before it's even started? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.